Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping straight into one of the most wild historical anomalies hiding in plain sight. Have you ever stopped to wonder why ancient calendars all perfectly agreed on a 360-day year, and then seemingly overnight they all simultaneously shifted to 365 and a quarter days? Our source material today lays out a captivating global detective story. It's a mystery that totally bridges the gap between historical calendars, ancient mythology, and the fundamental physics of our planet.
It all starts with one very specific number, 360. Today, we obviously know the Earth takes roughly 365 and a quarter days to complete its orbit around the Sun, but when we dig into the earliest historical records of humanity, they definitely weren't using 365. They used exactly 360.
So, we really have to ask ourselves, how did completely disconnected ancient cultures, separated by vast, uncrossable oceans and mountain ranges, all independently arrive at the exact same 360-day calendar? If it was just one civilization goofing up, sure, we could write it off as bad math. But when multiple, completely isolated societies all make the exact same mistake at the same time, that demands a closer look.
I mean, we're talking about the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Vedic culture, the Persians, the Maya, the Chinese, and the early Romans. Despite having zero contact with one another, all of these incredibly sophisticated astronomical cultures originally built their calendars on exactly 12 30-day months. And remember, these weren't primitive societies just making rough guesses. They were master astronomers who tracked the stars with unbelievable precision. Yet their records unanimously state the year had exactly 360 days.
So how do we interpret this? Well, the standard uniformitarian model basically says, hey, it was just a convenient mathematical rounding error. 360 is super easy to divide up, making it great for commerce and ancient administration. But the source material for this explainer outlines a totally different perspective, known as the Unified Theory of Geologic History, or the UTGH framework. This model proposes these ancient people weren't just rounding numbers for convenience. They were accurately measuring an Earth that physically changed. It argues the year literally was 360 days long, right up until a catastrophic global event.
Okay, so to wrap our heads around the physics of how a planet could just change its rotation, we have to talk about the conservation of angular momentum. It's a fundamental principle of physics that says if a spinning object shrinks in radius, it has to spin faster to conserve its momentum. You've definitely seen this with a figure skater on the ice. When they pull their arms in tight, reducing their overall radius, their spin instantly speeds up. Well, the UTGH theory applies that exact same physics directly to planet Earth.
According to the model, a massive geological rupture expelled a mind-boggling volume of deep subterranean water from beneath the planet's crust. And when that water was expelled, the crust literally collapsed inward to fill the void. This inward collapse physically shrank the planet, and because the Earth was now smaller, it was forced to spin faster, exactly like our figure skater. So, the Earth is spinning faster, which means a single day takes less time. And because the days are shorter, you suddenly fit more of them into a single year.
What's fascinating is that this framework doesn't just offer some vague general idea. It gets incredibly specific. The claim is that Earth's radius physically shrank by about 46 kilometers, dropping from a pre-catastrophe size of 6,417 kilometers down to the 6,371 kilometers we actually measure today. And here's the kicker. That 46-kilometer loss is the exact mathematical requirement needed to speed up the Earth's rotation from 360 days a year to 365.25 days.
Now, there's a really crucial distinction we need to make here. The orbit didn't change. The spin did. The theory emphasizes that Earth's actual path around the Sun, its heliocentric orbital period, stayed essentially exactly the same. The planet didn't suddenly jump farther away from the Sun. The smaller planet was simply fitting more, slightly shorter rotations into that exact same journey. The days got shorter, so it just took more of them to finish the lap.
When you actually run the numbers, you can see exactly how the sources arrive at this. Using the standard angular momentum formula, L equals I times omega, we can set up a simple ratio. If you substitute 365.25 modern rotations for the original 360, you get a velocity ratio of about 1.01458. Run that through the conservation equations, and it perfectly, and I mean perfectly, accounts for that 46-kilometer radius loss. Even crazier? This math indicates that before this proposed collapse, a single day was about 24 hours and 21 minutes long, so roughly 21 minutes longer than our day right now.
As the source material powerfully argues, those 5 extra days we have now, they aren't some collective mathematical mistake made by unconnected cultures. They are literally a permanent rotational scar left on our planet. physical evidence of a geological catastrophe that's written right into the sky and diligently recorded in every single ancient calendar that managed to survive the transition.
According to the timeline in the UTGH model, this whole shift settled out around 5,100 years ago. Earth's new, faster rotation finally locked into the 365.25-day year we know today. Now imagine being an ancient astronomer, or say an Egyptian administrator. You go on about your business and suddenly you realize your perfectly symmetrical 360-day calendar is completely broken. The seasons are drifting, planting schedules are ruined, religious festivals are totally out of sync. They had to abruptly panic correct their historical records.
And to fix this massive calendar drift, all these globally isolated cultures suddenly had to independently invent the exact same solution: intercalary days. They had to essentially patch their once-perfect calendars because the actual sky stopped matching their ancient records. The Egyptians suddenly added 5 epagomenal days, which literally means days added above the year. The Maya tacked on specific adjustment days at the end of their cycles. The Vedic and Babylonian cultures rolled out mandatory statewide calendar corrections, all at roughly the same time in human history to account for 5 very mysterious extra days.
Ultimately, the UTGH framework uses these ancient calendars not as mere mythology or rough estimates for ancient farmers, but as literal scientific instruments. Instruments that accurately measured the violent transition between 2 very different physical states of our planet. It points to a pre-flood world with a slightly larger radius and a neat 360-day year, transitioning catastrophically into our post-flood world with its shrunken radius and our modern 365.25-day year. So this leaves us with a pretty profound question to close out this explainer. Is it really just a massive coincidence that comparative mythology, orbital mathematics, and the conservation of angular momentum all converge on the exact same numbers? What if the so-called primitive myths of our ancestors, these universal stories of a 360-day year and a world-altering catastrophe, were actually just precise scientific observations of a world we've completely forgotten? It definitely makes you look at the calendar hanging on your wall in a whole new light.